Hi everybody, I hope that you're all doing really well. So today I am back to talk about my anticipated releases for the months of October to December, bringing us to the end of the year. It feels really weird to say that because I feel like I just did my anticipated releases for July to September. That does not feel very long ago, but I suppose that was the last video that came out just before I went on my July hiatus. So I suppose all the time got sucked up in the black hole that was me not being on YouTube for a whole month. As you might know, September, October, November are really the big months for publishing, especially September, because of course autumn, winter is when people tend to be inside. More people tend to be reading right now, and also there's the big push for Christmas. But then after the first week or so of December, things really start to peter out. So I actually don't really have any December books on my anticipated releases list. But I do have quite a few things that I want to talk about today, so let's just get straight into the book, shall we? The first book I want to talk to you about today comes out on the 7th of October, and it is Manifesto by Bernadine Evaristo. Bernadine Evaristo's 2019 Booker win, the first by a black woman, was a revolutionary moment both for British culture and for her. After 3 decades as a trailblazing writer, teacher and activist, she moved from the margins to centre stage, taking her place in the spotlight at last. Her journey was a long one, but she made it, and she made history. Manifesto is Bernadine Evaristo's intimate and inspirational, no-holds-barred account of how she did it, refusing to let any barriers stand in her way. She charts her creative rebellion against the mainstream and her lifelong commitment to the imaginative exploration of untold stories. And drawing deeply on her own experiences, she offers a vital contribution to current conversations around social issues such as race, class, feminism, sexuality, and aging. This is a unique book about staying true to yourself and to your vision. It's about how to be unstoppable in your craft, your work, and your life. It is Bernadine Evaristo's manifesto for never giving up. Having read Girl, Woman, Other and Mr. Loverman last year, I'm definitely very keen to read some non-fiction from Bernadine Evaristo. And she's definitely an author that I want to read much more from. I've definitely got my eye on things like Blonde Roots and The Emperor's Babe. Do let me know if you've read those other 2 fiction because I'd love to hear what you think. Next up, also coming out on the 7th of October, is a book by BookTube's very own, and that book is a short story collection, The Sister Who Ate Her Brothers and Other Gruesome Tales, which might take the prize for best title on this list. Jen Campbell's collection of terrifyingly gruesome tales lends a modern edge to fairy tale collections for young readers. Drawing on her extensive knowledge of fairy tale history, Campbell's stories undo the censoring, gender stereotyping and twee endings of more modern children's fairy tales to return both classic and little-known stories to their grim versions, while celebrating a diverse range of characters. Featuring 14 short stories from around the globe, The Sister Who Ate Her Brothers is illustrated in a contemporary style by Canadian comic artist Adam D'Souza. D'Souza's brooding illustrations are a highly original blend of 19th century Gothic engravings and moody film noir graphic novels. Beautifully produced in a hardback format with rose gold ribbon marker. I do love me some rose gold. The Sister Who Ate Her Brothers is a truly thrilling gift. Now, to be honest, I'm not really a big short story collection person, and I'm not even really a big fairy tale collection girl, but I feel like since it's Jen Campbell, I'm like, yeah, I'm there. At the very least, this will be quite a fun gift for my niece at some point. Maybe she's a bit too young for creepy fairy stories. I think she can hack it. Another 7th of October release is The Penguin Book of Christmas Stories. So short stories from a different kind of tack this time, not Halloween, but more Christmas. Yay! With this beautifully illustrated cover by Coralie Bickford-Smith, Truman Capote makes whiskey-soaked fruitcake in Alabama, Laurie Lee slides across a frozen pond in Gloucestershire, and Shirley Jackson is outwitted by a wily Santa Claus at the bank. Ghosts haunt the Christmases of Muriel Spark and Elizabeth Bowen, while Dostoevsky, Daphne du Maurier and Italo Calvino take a cynical view of the season, and Selma Lagerlof and Angela Carter celebrate its miracles, ranging from Cork to Lagos to the Wild West and from Paris to Sao Paulo to outer space. This is Christmas as imagined by some of the greatest short story writers of all time. As you might know, I have a little collection of Christmas books at my home in Huddersfield, and I do like to populate that with at least 1 or 2 books each year, so I think this is definitely going to be the book that I pick this time round. Next up, we have our first history book on the list, also coming out on the 7th of October. It is George III, The Life and Reign of Britain's Most Misunderstood Monarch by Andrew Roberts. This is a book that I'm not quite sure when it is that I would get around to reading it, but I am so intrigued by all of the conversation that is surely going to come up around this book. George III is obviously quite a notorious monarch, known as the Mad King who lost the USA, but I do think on a lot of levels it's very reductionist to look at him just by that aspect of him. You know, this is a king who had a 60-year reign and who was beloved by his subjects, aside from the American ones, obviously. George III, Britain's longest reigning king, has gone down in history as the cruelest tyrant of this age, a sovereign who inflicted more profound and enduring injuries upon this country than any other modern English king, one of England's most disastrous kings, and as the pompous monarch of the musical Hamilton. Da, 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 da. Andrew Roberts' magnificent new biography takes entirely the opposite view. It portrays George as intelligent, benevolent, scrupulously devoted to the constitution of his country, and as head of government as well as head of state, navigating the turbulence of 18th century politics with a strong sense of honour and duty. He was a devoted husband and family man, a great patron of the arts and scientists, keen to advance Britain's agricultural capacity, note his nickname Farmer George, and determined that her horizons should be global. He could be stubborn and self-righteous, but he was also brave, brushing aside numerous assassination attempts, galvanising his ministers and generals at moments of crisis, and stoical in the face of his dissent, 5 times during his life, into a horrifying loss of mind. This book gives a detailed revisionist account of the American Revolutionary War, persuasively taking apart a significant proportion of the Declaration of Independence, which Roberts shows to be largely Jeffersonian propaganda. Oh, that's going to step on some toes. In a later war, he describes how George's support for William Pitt was crucial in the battle against Napoleon, and he makes a convincing modern diagnosis of George's terrible malady, very different to the widely accepted medical view and to popular portrayals. Roberts writes, the people who knew George III best loved him the most, and that far from being a tyrant or incompetent, George III was one of our most admirable monarchs. The diarist Fanny Burney, who spent 4 years at his court and saw him often, wrote, a noble sovereign this is, and when justice is done to him, he will be as such acknowledged. In presenting this fresh view of Britain's most misunderstood monarch, George III shows one of Britain's premier historians at his sparkling best. Like I say, I feel like this is going to step on quite a few people's toes, but I'm really interested to see the conversation it sparks. Next up, coming out on the 12th of October, is one of my most anticipated books. It's Truth of the Devine by Lindsay Ellis, which is the second book in her Axioms End series. The human race is at a crossroads. We know that we are not alone, but details about the alien presence on Earth is still being withheld from the public. As the political climate becomes more unstable, the world is forced to consider the ramifications of granting human rights to non-human persons. How do you define person in the first place? Cora Sabino not only serves as the full-time communication intermediary between the alien entity Ampersand and his government chaperones, but also shares a mysterious bond with him that is both painful and intimate in a way that neither of them could have anticipated. Despite this, Ampersand is still keen on keeping secrets, even from her, which backfires on both of them when investigative journalist Kava Mazandarani, a close colleague of Cora's estranged whistleblower father, witnesses far more of Ampersand's machinations than anyone was meant to see. Since Cora has no choice but to trust Kava, the two must work together to prove to a fearful world that intelligent, conscious beings should be considered persons, no matter how monstrous-looking, powerful, or malicious they may seem. Making this case is hard enough when the public doesn't know what it's dealing with, and it will only become harder when a mysterious flash illuminates the sky, marking the arrival of an agent of chaos that will light an already unstable world on fire. As you might be able to tell, this is not my normal read, it is sci-fi, but I am a big fan of Lindsay Ellis, so, you know, I'm reading this series. And I did really enjoy the first one, so we shall see, we shall see. And then we've got another one of my most anticipated books back to back. We have coming out on the 28th of October, Ask a Historian, 50 Surprising Answers to Things You Always Wanted to Know by Greg Jenner. Will I ever shut up about Greg Jenner and the You're Dead to Me podcast? Absolutely not. If he keeps on writing books, I'm just going to keep on talking about him. Why is Italy called Italy? How old is curry? Which people from history would best pull off a casino heist? Who was the richest person of all time? When was the first Monday? What were history's weirdest medical procedures that actually worked? How much horse manure was splattered on the streets of Tudor London? How fast was the medieval Chinese postal system? What did the Flintstones get right about the Stone Age? Who gets to name historical eras, and what will ours be called in 100 years' time? How do we know how people sounded in the past, and how old is sign language? In Ask a Historian, the author, BBC podcaster, and public historian Greg Jenner provides answers to things you always wanted to know about but didn't know who to ask. Responding to 50 genuine questions from the public, Greg whisks you off on an entertaining tour through the ages, revealing the best and most surprising stories, facts, and historical characters from the past. Bouncing through a wide range of subjects from ancient joke books, African empires, and bizarre tales of medicinal cannibalism to the invention of meringues, mirrors, and menstrual pads, Ask a Historian spans from the Stone Age to the swinging 60s and offers up a deliciously amusing and informative smorgasbord of historical curiosities, devoured one morsel at a time. Also coming out on the 28th of October is one that is a bit of a departure from the other books on this list, but is one that has a bit of a nostalgic pull for me, and that is Clarice Bean, Think Like an Elf by Lauren Child. I think I've mentioned Clarice Bean a couple of times before when I've talked about childhood favourites, but I was such a massive fan of the Clarice Bean books. Less so the picture books and more the novels, but the novels Utterly Me, Clarice Bean Spells Trouble, and Clarice Bean Don't Look Now. I just utterly loved them. And I actually wrote to Lauren Child once when I was a child, and she sent me a postcard back, and I still have the postcard tucked away. I just remember being about 8 years old and really wanting them to make a film of Clarice Bean, and I wanted to play Clarice Bean because I thought I looked like her. So when I was at work, I was looking through the bookseller magazine, because that's one of the great parts of my job is that I get to look through all the magazines and I get to clip all the reviews. And I saw on one of the listings that this book was coming out, and I did a little squeal at my desk because I don't think we've had a full Clarice Bean novel since Clarice Bean Don't Look Now. And even if it is for children, you better believe I am picking up a copy for myself. Clarice Bean usually looks forward to Christmas, except this year is going to be a quietish Christmas in her house, which doesn't feel right because Christmas is all about noisiness and being full up and family. And without those things, she's going to have to try exceptionally hard to stop the Christmas spirit completely floating away. This is one of the things about Clarice Bean, is that she doesn't, she have to mix up words and it's quite funny. But luckily there is no one in the world like Clarice Bean, and she is going to think like an elf. And that means that everything will be a-okay, won't it? The one and only Clarice Bean is back to save her family's Christmas in this sparkling story of joy, goodwill to all people kind, and some very Clarice catastrophes, perfect for sharing with all the family. Also out on the 28th of October is This is the Canon, Decolonize Your Bookshelves in 50 Books by Joan Anim-Addo, Deirdre Osborne and Kadija Sesay George, who, according to the blurb, have curated a decolonized reading list that celebrates the wide and diverse experiences of people from all around the world, of all backgrounds and all races. It disrupts the all too often white-dominated required reading collections that have become the accepted norm, and highlights powerful voices and cultural perspectives that demand a place on our shelves. From literary giants such as Toni Morrison and Chinua Achebe, to less well-known but equally vital writers such as Caribbean novelist Earl Lovelace or Indigenous Australian author Tony Birch, the novels recommended here are in turn haunting and lyrical, innovative and inspiring, edgy and poignant. The power of great fiction is that readers have the opportunity to discover new worlds and encounter other beliefs and opinions. This is the Canon offers a rich and multifaceted perspective on our past, present and future, which deserves to be read by all bibliophiles, whether they are book club members or solitary readers, self-educators or teachers. We know I'm a big fan of books about books, and I like this because I think this is going to be more instructive, more thought-provoking, and just open my eyes to a lot of books that I hadn't heard about before. Now moving into November, coming out on the 4th of November, as I think most of these books are, pretty much all of these books are coming out on the 4th of November now, is Crown and Sceptre, A New History of the British Monarchy from William the Conqueror to Elizabeth II by Tracy Borman. Of course there had to be another British monarch book here. The British monarchy is one of the most iconic and enduring institutions in the world. It has weathered the storms of rebellion, revolution and war that brought many of Europe's royal families to an abrupt and bloody end. Its unique survival owes much to the fact that for all its ancient traditions and protocol, the royal family has proved remarkably responsive to change, evolving to reflect the times. But for much of its history, it also spearheaded seismic change, shaping our religious, political and cultural identity and establishing the British monarchy as the envy of the world. There has never been a more apposite moment to consider the history of this extraordinary survivor. Within the next decade, there is likely to be a change of monarch, sparking renewed global interest on a scale not seen since Elizabeth II's coronation in 1953. Even the media and royal frenzy provoked by recent royal events such as royal weddings and births will not compare to that generated by the accession of a new king. In the lead up to this pivotal moment in British history, Crown and Sceptre explores the history and evolution of the monarchy from 1066 to the present day, feeding the renewed interest not just in modern royals, but in the predecessors who helped shape the institution into what it is today. It's a very good thing that we don't live in the day of Henry VIII, where even speculating on the king's death could have been treasonous. But I've read a couple of books by Tracy Borman. I really respect her, so I'm looking forward to this. I do love me a big sweeping history of British monarchy. I don't know what that says about me, but there we go. Turning back to the Christmas books, coming out also on the 4th of November, we have At Christmas We Feast, Festive Food Through the Ages by Annie Gray. For many people, Christmas wouldn't be Christmas without a turkey and trimmings, pudding and brandy butter. But where do our traditions come from? And when modern writers reinvent the Christmas meal, are they really doing anything so very different? Annie Gray presents a delectable trip through time, from the earliest mentions of gluttonous meals at Christmas to the trappings and traditions of the present day, tracing the birth of the 12-day celebration under Edward I to the restoration of holiday splendour under Victoria. At Christmas We Feast is organised by festive dish and features classic recipes alongside vibrant cultural and historical context. From the familiarity of plum pudding and mince pies to the extravagance of boar's head and brawn, At Christmas We Feast is stuffed with recipes, doused with history and tradition, and sprinkled with the joy of the feasts of Christmas past. Once again, this is mixing my love of history and Christmas, but also some of the interest that I had at BA in food and recipes. My dissertation for my BA was actually on printed cookbooks of the 18th century, so I feel like this is going to give me flashbacks to that time. And then finally, one that I think is going to be gracing a lot of people's lists, coming out on the 11th of November, is The Fell by Sarah Moss. At dusk on a November evening in 2020, a woman slips out of her garden gate and turns up the hill. Kate is in the middle of a 2-week quarantine period, but she just can't take it anymore. The closeness of the air in her small house, the confinement, and anyway, the mall will be deserted at this time. Nobody need ever know. But Kate's neighbour Alice sees her leaving, and Matt, Kate's son, soon realises she's missing. And Kate, who only planned a quick solitary walk, a breath of open air, falls and badly injures herself. What began as a furtive walk has been turned into a mountain rescue operation. Unbearably suspenseful, witty and wise, the Fell asks probing questions about the place the world has become since March 2020, and the place it was before. This novel is a story about compassion and kindness, and what we must do to survive, and it will move you to tears. So I think this is going to be one of the first pandemic books I'll be reading. Certainly the first fictional pandemic book that is explicitly about COVID. I've not really read much of Sarah Moss, but I'm always really blown away by how quickly she does get out these books. This one seems like it's going to be very character and relationships focused, which we know are big ticks for me. I'm really interested in seeing how she tells this story, if it's going to be like flashbacks, moving through multiple timelines. It seems like the kind of book that would do that. But it is also quite a short book, which once again, another win for me. We like a short fiction book. So yeah, I'm really interested in this. I feel like a lot of people are going to be picking this up when it comes out in November. So there we go. Those are all of the books that I'm really excited about that are going to be coming out in the next few months. Do let me know what you're thinking about these books that I've mentioned and any other books that are coming out that I didn't talk about. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic, fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.